see you in the land of Mordor. Death awaits you at the border. Pass on through the gates of fun. Destroy the ring of power and wonder. Shadows increasing. Peace throughout the land. This season evil mist flows through.
Hey, Roman Daisel here with another video of Iron Crown Enterprises Middle-earth role-playing game from the 1980s. Today I got the 5th campaign book called Southern Mirkwood, Haunt of the Necromancer. This is labeled 2700 in the series, and this one was released in 1983 before the 4th book, the Northern Mirkwood book. I guess there were delays in Northern Mirkwood and Southern Mirkwood came out. Again, I didn't have this book. I had the 2nd edition book in the late 80s that had both Northern and Southern Mirkwood combined. So in order to complete the collection, I went back, and to see if it was any different, I went back and got this off eBay back in 1999, 2000. Forget what I paid for it. It was quite a bit though. And I had to have it shipped to my mom, and then my mom had to ship it to me in Korea, which was a pain in the ass. And then I laminated the maps. So this basically details all the Southern Rhovanion and Southern Mirkwood. It contained the 4 major layouts like they all do. It included Dol Guldur, this 16 by 20 full colored insert, and maps out Woodman Town and the Hill of Sorcery and the Horse Lord settlement. So Southern Mirkwood starts from the old Forest Road and goes down all the way to Southern Rhovanion, between the Anduin and not quite the Sea of Rune, and almost to the Southern Emyn Muil, and not yet getting to Mordor. It doesn't talk about the Dead Marshes or anything like that. It's just mainly concerned with Southern Rhovanion, Southern Mirkwood and Rhovanion. So again, with these maps are cool. This map and the Northern Mirkwood map pretty much line up evenly. I think there's a little tiny bit of space in between last time I looked, but you don't really notice it too much. And you can connect the 2 Mirkwoods and it looks really cool. And then I can connect other things to this too. So when you flip it over, it gives you the legend. And you have the Hill of Sorcery, which is Dol Guldur, where Sauron hid for a long time while he was retaking shape and rebuilding his power. It took him forever to rebuild power. And then it also has the Woodman Town, which they made into like a tree flet. Don't quite agree with, but it makes sense in certain ways. There were several Woodman towns in Southern Mirkwood on the western side. And then it also has the Horse Lords of the Rhovanion. So the Grammas and the Eothram were 2 of the bigger ones. These were the predecessors of the Rohirrim. During the Wainrider Wars, the remains of this Northman culture left in the 19th century, 3rd age. They left Northern and Southern Rhovanion and traveled all the way up into the Northern Wilderrun, which is between Mirkwood and the Misty Mountains. And then, during the time of the Stuarts, when Cirion called them, he sent messengers way up to the northern part of the Anduin, between Mirkwood, the Misty Mountains, and the Grey Mountains, kind of hemmed in. He called for Ethiod, as they were called at the time, and they came down with Eorl the Young, came down out of the north and saved Gondor, and was given the province of Calenardon as his own kingdom, his own country, which became Rohan. So that's where the Rohirrim started out in the 3rd age. They were on the eastern side of Mirkwood Forest and to the south of it, in the Great Plains, which is where they built their horse culture. So like any of these early campaign modules, it gives you the definitions of what to expect, and some general guidelines and stats tables, locks and traps, suggested spell list. Magic wasn't a big part of Tolkienism. He didn't really explain magic very well and never elaborated too much. It's one of those things that was just there. And then it gives you the basic descriptions of the color maps, and it gives you where everything can be found in Dorunin. So there's Beornings down this far. There's Stuart Hobbits down there. So it was kind of cool because that's where Gollum was from, in the Gladden Fields. It has some Eothram, the urban Northmen. The Sagoth again, they were spread out. Asdriags. Got some Asdriags in the corner. And then Gondorians. This was at the time, because the timeline in this book is 1640, after the Great Plague, which is a current theme, 1640. Third Age. The Gondorians were still in control of a province called Dorunin. In fact, my by name that I use for this channel, Roman Daisel, is named after the guy who went out and conquered the Easterlings, defeated the Easterlings and conquered this huge territory called Dorunin. And Roman Daisel means East Victor. So that's where my by name comes from in this channel. It also gives you a grid map, which I never use. I don't like ruining it, these books. So then it gives you the basic introduction of the land of the Southern Rhovanion. That's the roads, the topography, weather patterns, vegetation, flora, fauna of all the various areas. Because now you have different regions. You have the river system of the Anduin. You have Mirkwood. And then you have the East Bight of Mirkwood, which is here. And then you have the wide plains of the Tal of Herok, which is Rhovania, Southern Rhovania. And then it talks about some of the creatures you'll find. The birds of Roscoble. So you'll find Radagast the Brown. His little home is at the edge of the western Mirkwood in Roscoble. The western edge of Mirkwood called Roscoble. So he's in here. And of course you have Dol Guldur Mirkwood, which is right across from Lorien. So for some reason Radagast was able to stay by Mirkwood for so long in his own home of Roscoble. Considering how close it was, it must have had some kind of impact. Talks about the giant spiders, the fell beasts of the Emin Guldur. And then it goes into the inhabitants of Southern Rhovania, Gondor's eastern lands and the conquest of the east. So there were Gondorians in that region up until the 19th century, when they pulled out during the Wain Rider Wars. And the Wain Rider Wars effectively ended any chance Gondor had of reclaiming Dorunin. It also talks about Vidugavia and the Gondor's kin strife, which happened in the 15th century, so 1409. And then the plague. Then it also talks about the Beornings, which are a little bit different. And then it goes on to talk about the other Northman groups. So you have the Eothram, the Eothram Grammas and Northmen of the East Bight and the Tal of Herok. So there were some towns in the East Bight, and they're called urban. So there were some towns in the East Bight, and they're called urban Northmen. And then it goes to the Woodmen. So on this map, you see the Woodman town is way up there. There's probably like 2 or 3 of these things, all along the western side, up until you get to Beorn's house. And then on the eastern side, you can see that they have a couple of small towns. These are probably all gone by the 19th century, after the Wain Rider Wars, all those towns on the eastern side. And there would just be camps of Easterlings now. Because after the Wain Riders came, then it talks more about the Easterlings. You got the Asdriags, and then the Sagoth, which are the 2 main tribes of that time. It also talks about dwarves, because dwarves were also delving in Dol Guldur before the Necromancer came. And then it has the Necromancer's orcs. So this is at a time when the Necromancer doesn't have a lot of orcs in the area, though that's steadily changing. And then, so section 6, they go into politics and power. It goes into detail about Sauron's presence and his servants, the presence of the ring, which isn't really there, it's in the Gladden Fields. And then it talks about Radagast. And then it goes into more detail about the lords of the free peoples. So the Gondor's overseer, the Gondorian presence, the various chieftains of the tribes, because the Eothram were not unified by any means. And then it goes into Woodman Town, homes among the Bejabar, which are the Beornings, and the homesteads on the plains. And it gives you a brief description of a holding. Only gives you a slight picture of Roscoble, Radagast's home. I wish they'd gone into more detail with him. He doesn't really play that much of a role in the history. And then you have Dol Guldur, and it describes all the various areas, treasures, weapons, provisions. Gives a description of Sauron himself and the Throne of Doom, which I thought was pretty cool, the Throne of Doom. And it goes level by level down. Iron Crown later revisited Dol Guldur in the 1990s with its own Citadel book, which is even more in-depth and cooler and gives more backstory. But for this campaign, it was pretty cool, though realistically, you're never going to be able to break into this place. Only someone like Gandalf could get in and out, and he did so twice. In the movies, they made Dol Guldur into this old fortress old elven fortress on a height. In Iron Crown, they made it into an old volcanic cone, kind of like what Isengard is. And it makes more sense if dwarves have been digging there, that it's going to be on a hill. So I'm not sure which version to believe. I had to go back and check Tolkien's writings on the subject of what Dol Guldur really was. I never liked how the Hobbit portrayed Dol Guldur. Yeah, it looks cool, but unrealistic how they did it. Now that is a cool throne room. So you gotta remember Thrain, he spent a lot of time here after it was when he was captured and his ring was taken from him. But how they didn't find the map, the map and the key must have been stuck up his butt. How'd they miss that when they got the ring? And then it gets into the lair of the seer, which is Sieber Fonuin. This guy is not exactly evil, but he's not exactly good. A Gondorian outpost, and then an Asdriag hold, and then one of the bigger holds. And it gives you some notes on player character, possibilities and challenges for game players. And then my favorite, the combat master military chart. So you can see how many troops Gondor had at the time, what each tribe had at the time. And then other stuff for non-player characters. And then it goes into the brief history of Rhovania. So it talks about the Entwives. Then it goes into the Third Age, the coming of the Shadow and the rise of the Rhovanian Northmen. And then the continuing struggle. And then it gives some other times of what happened afterwards. So it's very brief in how they portrayed it. But for such a sizable area, they can't do everything. But I would really have liked them to put more detail into... The Dol Guldur was pretty good. I'd like to see more of Rosgobel. Though I realized that Radagast was a minor character. And I'd just like to see more progression of the Master Military table from one era to the next. Overall, it complements the Northern Mirkwood perfectly, and also can be used with the Rohan campaign book that they brought out later on, and the Gondorian books they brought out with. Anyway, anyone who ever played this book, played this game, this campaign, let me know how you guys thought. I didn't have this one. I had the second edition one, and it was pretty good. I used it a couple times. And I always do the military stuff. Play with armies, because I like that. And anyway, any fans out there of the Middle-earth role-playing system, let me know. Until next time, this is Roman Daysel. I'm out of here.